In a world that often equates strength with visibility, some men thrive not by seeking the spotlight but by embracing the power of solitude. While many find comfort and confidence in blending into the crowd, others uncover an even deeper resilience by standing apart, moving through life with quiet determination, shaping their destiny without the need for external validation. These men are the Sigma males, a rare and often misunderstood archetype that exists outside the traditional hierarchy of alpha and beta personalities. Unlike the alpha, who leads with dominance, or the beta, who seeks harmony within the group, the Sigma male operates on his own terms. He is self-sufficient, introspective, and fiercely private, refusing to conform to societal expectations or reveal more about himself than necessary. But what drives this secrecy? Why do Sigma males guard their past so closely? The answer lies in their fundamental belief that personal history should not dictate present identity. They recognize that the trials they've endured, the mistakes they've made, and the battles they've fought are part of their journey, but they refuse to let those experiences become labels that others use to define them. To a Sigma male, the past is a closed chapter, not a story to be dissected by outsiders. He understands that revealing too much invites judgment, pity, or unwarranted assumptions, none of which serve his purpose. Instead, he chooses silence, not out of shame, but out of a deliberate commitment to self-mastery. So, what exactly do Sigma males keep hidden? What are the untold stories they carry, the experiences that shape them but remain locked away? In this exploration, we'll uncover 8 key aspects of their past that Sigma males rarely, if ever, disclose. These are not just secrets for secrecy's sake, they are carefully guarded truths that reflect their philosophy of independence, resilience, and forward motion. From turbulent childhoods to abandoned dreams, from painful betrayals to silent triumphs, each hidden piece reveals why the Sigma male would rather let his actions speak for him than waste words on explanations. If you've ever wondered why these men seem so self-assured yet so detached, why they command respect without demanding attention, then understanding what they conceal will provide the answers. This is not just about what they hide, but why they hide it, and how this calculated silence becomes their greatest strength. Number 1. The art of walking away, why Sigma males sever ties without looking back. Some of the most painful lessons a Sigma male learns come not from strangers but from those he once held closest, friends who betrayed him, mentors who exploited his trust, or even family members who drained him emotionally. Where others might cling to toxic relationships out of guilt, obligation, or fear of loneliness, the Sigma male does something far more difficult: he walks away. Not with drama, not with grand announcements, but with a quiet finality that speaks volumes. This is not a decision made lightly. Cutting ties with someone who once meant everything leaves scars, ones that heal but never fully fade. Yet, you will rarely hear him speak of these losses. He does not dwell on the betrayal, nor does he seek validation for his choice to leave. To him, discussing it only reopens the wound, and he has no interest in letting past pain taint his present. Instead, he internalizes the lesson that not all bonds are meant to last, and sometimes, walking away is the strongest act of self-respect. This is not bitterness, it is clarity. He understands that holding on to what no longer serves him only slows his growth. So he moves forward, not with resentment, but with the quiet knowledge that some people are only meant to be chapters, not the entire story. When asked about those who are no longer in his life, he offers no explanations. He does not need to. His strength lies not in justifying his past but in building a future where he is no longer defined by those who failed him. The Sigma male does not mourn the loss, he outgrows it. And that, more than any words, is his answer. Number 2. The weight of a turbulent childhood, why Sigma males move forward in silence. For many Sigma males, childhood was not a time of stability or comfort but a series of disruptions that forced them to grow up too soon. Their early years may have been marked by financial instability, perhaps moving from place to place, never staying long enough to form deep roots. Or perhaps their home was a battleground of constant arguments, where tension hung thick in the air, teaching them early on that trust is fragile and self-reliance is necessary. Unlike those who wear their trauma as a badge of victimhood, Sigma males rarely speak of these experiences, not because they are in denial, but because they refuse to let their past dictate their identity. Every sudden move, every broken promise, every night spent listening to raised voices in another room quietly shaped them. Instead of breaking under the weight of instability, they learn to adapt, to read situations quickly, to rely on their own judgment, and to find strength in solitude. By the time they reached adulthood, they had already mastered the art of detachment, understanding that dependence on others could be a liability. Yet, they do not carry these stories as wounds to be displayed. To them, the past is not a sob story but a forge that hardened their resilience. They would rather let their unshaken composure speak for itself than waste time explaining why they are the way they are. The Sigma male does not seek sympathy, he has already outgrown the need for it. Number 3, the forgotten dream, why Sigma males abandon what no longer serves them. Every Sigma male has, at some point, poured his soul into a pursuit he believed was his destiny, only to realize, often painfully, that it was never truly his. Maybe it was a childhood dream of athletic glory, a passion for music that once burned bright, or an academic pursuit he thought would define his legacy. For years, he might have sacrificed sleep, relationships, and even his own well-being for this singular goal, convinced that success in this arena would finally make him whole. But somewhere along the way, a quiet realization settled in, this path was not his own. Perhaps it was a dream imposed by others, or one he outgrew without noticing. Where others might double down out of sunk cost fallacy, clinging to a fading dream because they've already invested too much to quit, the Sigma male does something far more difficult, he walks away. Not in defeat, but in clarity. He does not mourn the years spent chasing what ultimately didn't fulfill him, instead, he sees them as necessary lessons in self-awareness. He understands that the true mark of wisdom is not stubborn persistence, but the ability to discern when something no longer aligns with who he is becoming. You will rarely hear him speak of these abandoned dreams. Not because he is ashamed, but because they simply no longer matter. To dwell on them would be to give weight to a version of himself that no longer exists. The Sigma male does not see this as failure, he sees it as growth. Success, to him, is not just about achieving goals, but about having the discernment to release the ones that no longer serve him. And so, without fanfare or explanation, he moves on, carrying only the lessons forward while leaving the rest behind. Number 4, the constant evolution, why Sigma males leave their past selves behind. The Sigma male exists in a state of perpetual metamorphosis, a conscious architect of his own identity who understands that growth is not merely an option, but an imperative. Unlike those who find comfort in the stagnant waters of a fixed personality, he thrives in the current of continuous transformation, reinventing himself with the disciplined spontaneity of a master improviser. 5 years ago, you might have encountered a version of him that bears little resemblance to who stands before you today, perhaps a passionate artist who could lose hours in the flow of creation, a corporate strategist meticulously climbing the organizational hierarchy, or a restless seeker traversing distant lands in pursuit of existential truths. That former self now exists as a distant echo, a shadowy outline of a man he once was but no longer recognizes. This evolutionary process occurs in the silent chambers of his psyche, far from the performative self-reinvention so common in our social media age. Where others might stage dramatic public transformations for validation, the Sigma male's changes unfold with the organic inevitability of seasons shifting, visible only in hindsight to those paying close attention. His is not the flamboyant reinvention of a midlife crisis, but the deliberate, purposeful evolution of a man committed to actualizing his potential. The engine driving this constant becoming is neither insecurity nor caprice, but rather an insatiable intellectual hunger and profound self-awareness. 1 year might find him engrossed in existential philosophy, not just reading Nietzsche and Camus but living their questions, testing their ideas against the anvil of his own experience. The next could see him mastering Python or Mandarin, not to pad his resume but because the challenge ignites his curiosity. His pursuits follow an internal logic invisible to outsiders, a private curriculum designed by and for himself alone. This evolutionary path requires ruthless honesty. Where others cling to comfortable identities out of fear or convenience, the Sigma male regularly audits his beliefs, skills, and goals with the dispassionate scrutiny of a scientist. He understands that growth demands the periodic death of outmoded selves, and he meets these mini-deaths not with mourning but with anticipation. His confidence comes not from being certain of who he is, but from being comfortable with who he might become. When former acquaintances express astonishment at his transformation, he meets their bewilderment with quiet amusement. He feels no need to explain the journey, to justify the changes, or to bridge the gap between their memory and his present reality. The Sigma male makes peace with being misunderstood because he recognizes that most people see only snapshots of a moving picture they can't comprehend. His past selves are not failures to be disowned, but necessary iterations in an ongoing experiment in becoming. What makes this evolutionary process uniquely Sigma is its self-contained nature. Unlike the alpha who changes to impress or dominate, or the beta who changes to fit in, the Sigma male evolves according to his own internal compass. His transformations serve no audience, fulfill no external expectations, and seek no validation. They are, like the man himself, profoundly authentic, not reactions to the world, but expressions of his deepest self. In a culture obsessed with personal branding and consistent identities, the Sigma male's willingness to outgrow himself again and again may be his most radical and inspiring quality. Number 5, the silent rebirth, Why Sigma males don't advertise their comebacks. Every Sigma male has a moment in his life when the ground gave way beneath him, a financial freefall that wiped out his stability, a career setback that forced him to rebuild from nothing, or a personal crisis that tested his will to continue. What separates him from others isn't that he faced hardship, it's how he faced it. While some broadcast their struggles, seeking sympathy or support, the Sigma male does something different. He retreats inward. He doesn't announce his battles, he wages them in silence. No dramatic declarations, no public breakdowns, just the steady, relentless work of pulling himself out, one handhold at a time. This isn't about pride. It's about principle. He understands that adversity is not an audience sport. The moment you share your struggles, they become part of how others see you, and the Sigma male refuses to be defined by his lowest moments. He doesn't want applause for surviving what nearly broke him, nor does he want pity for the scars he carries. To him, overcoming hardship isn't extraordinary, it's simply what a man does when he has no other choice. Each crisis he conquers alone reinforces his deepest belief that he is the architect of his own fate. So when others marvel at his resilience, he offers no stories of triumph. Not because he has none, but because those victories belong to him alone. The Sigma male knows that true strength isn't proven by recounting past struggles, it's demonstrated every day in the unshakable man he has become. And that, more than any tale of survival, is all the proof he needs. Number 6, the strength of invisibility. Why Sigma males rise from being unseen. Before the Sigma male developed the quiet confidence he carries today, he was often the forgotten one, the student whose name teachers struggled to recall, the friend who existed on the periphery of social circles, the face in the crowd that never quite stood out. While others competed for attention or validation, he existed in the background, observing more than participating. This early experience of being overlooked could have broken someone with a weaker spirit, but for the Sigma male, it became an unexpected gift. Solitude, forced upon him by the indifference of others, taught him something invaluable: how to be entirely self-contained. There was no applause in his formative years, no mentors singling him out for praise, no peers seeking his approval. And yet, this absence of external validation became his greatest teacher. He learned to measure his worth by his own standards rather than the fleeting opinions of those who barely noticed him. He discovered that true strength doesn't come from being celebrated, it comes from the quiet certainty of knowing who you are, even when no one else does. Now, when people encounter the Sigma male's unshakable composure and wonder where it came from, he offers no origin story. Not because he is hiding anything, but because he refuses to anchor his identity to a past where he was insignificant. That version of him is gone. The man he is now was forged in silence, and he feels no need to explain himself to those who once looked right through him. Number 7, the silent crucible, wisdom that doesn't need witnesses. Deep within the psychological architecture of every Sigma male lies a private chamber, a sanctum where his most transformative trials are preserved not as stories to be told, but as alchemical processes that permanently altered his being. These aren't merely difficult experiences, they are existential thresholds crossed in solitude, after which no part of him remained unchanged. The nature of these crucibles varies. For some, it's the humiliating collapse of everything they built, finding themselves at middle age counting coins for groceries. For others, it's staring into the abyss of their own mortality during a midnight health crisis with no one to call. Perhaps most devastating are the betrayals that don't just break trust but shatter entire worldviews, leaving them to reconstruct their understanding of human nature from the ground up. What distinguishes the Sigma male's experience isn't the intensity of suffering, many endure similar trials, but the hermetic nature of his transformation. Where modern therapy culture advocates vocal processing and communal healing, the Sigma male instinctively understands that some wounds must heal in darkness, like bones setting stronger when undisturbed. His processing occurs in a private, wordless dimension, not through journaling or confession, but through a gradual, almost physiological absorption of the experience into his cellular memory. The lessons aren't extracted, they're osmosed through the slow pressure of solitary reflection. This silent integration produces a wisdom that's palpable yet ineffable. You see it in the unhurried way he handles crises that would panic others, not because he's emotionless, but because his nervous system has been permanently recalibrated by greater storms. Observe how he receives bad news with that slight, knowing nod, the expression of a man who anticipated this possibility long ago. Notice the absence of performative stoicism. His calm isn't manufactured for show, but the natural byproduct of having already survived what others can barely imagine. The Sigma male's relationship to his crucibles resembles a master craftsman's relationship to his tools. He doesn't need to display them to know their power. His hardest-won insights remain unspoken because language would reduce them. What could he say about the depth of betrayal that hasn't been trivialized by 1,000 pop psychology books? How could he explain the value of having rebuilt his life from rubble when society only understands success narratives? These experiences have become such fundamental aspects of his being that discussing them would feel like explaining his skeletal structure, absurd in their obviousness to him, incomprehensible in their complexity to others. In an era where trauma has become social currency and vulnerability is performative, the Sigma male silence constitutes a radical act of autonomy. He refuses to monetize his pain for sympathy points or weaponize it for moral leverage. His suffering has been distilled into something purer, an indestructible core of self-knowledge that needs no external validation. When lesser men boast of their hardships as credentials, he listens with polite disinterest, recognizing that true fortitude isn't measured in war stories but in the quiet certainty of one's capacity to endure. This private reservoir of hard-won wisdom manifests most powerfully in what he doesn't do. He doesn't flinch at setbacks that would paralyze others, doesn't seek external validation for his choices, doesn't require explanations for life's cruelties. His crucibles have taught him the most subversive lesson of all, that the deepest transformations occur beyond the witness of others, in that sacred space where a man and his destiny meet without spectators. The Sigma male isn't silent about his past because he's ashamed or traumatized, but because he respects its power too much to dilute it with words. Number 8, the death of idols, when disillusionment forges self-reliance. Every Sigma male can pinpoint the moment his trust in heroes died, the day he discovered that the mentor he revered, the teacher he admired, or the family member he looked up to was deeply, irrevocably flawed. This wasn't just disappointment, it was a tectonic shift in his worldview. The coach who preached discipline but couldn't control his own vices, the intellectual role model whose private life contradicted his public wisdom, the parent who demanded excellence but lived in hypocrisy, these betrayals didn't just hurt. They educated. What makes this revelation particularly transformative is its absolute nature. The Sigma male doesn't simply move on to idolize someone new, he abandons the very concept of external role models entirely. Where others might cycle through successive mentors, he recognizes the pattern: all heroes eventually reveal their clay feet. This isn't cynicism, it's clarity. The sting of betrayal teaches him that ultimate accountability rests with oneself. You'll never hear him speak bitterly about these fallen idols, not because the wound doesn't exist, but because he's extracted its lesson. No one should have that much power over your self-concept. In the absence of heroes, he becomes his own standard. His moral compass points inward, calibrated by hard-won experience rather than borrowed ideals. When younger men seek his guidance, he doesn't position himself as an infallible example, he teaches them to think for themselves. The Sigma male's greatest strength isn't that he follows no one, but that he's learned to lead himself without needing to look up or down at anyone else. Conclusion. For the Sigma male, the past is not a story to be told but a forge that shaped the steel of his character, and like any master craftsman, he understands that the process matters more than the explanation. He guards his history not out of shame or secrecy, but from a profound understanding that true growth happens in the quiet spaces between who he was and who he has become. Every trial he endured, every betrayal that carved deeper resilience into his spirit, every moment of reinvention, these are not chapters for public consumption. They are sacred texts, written in a language only he fully understands, their power lying in their integration rather than their narration. What the outside world often misinterprets as emotional detachment is actually a form of radical self-possession. The Sigma male recognizes that most people don't truly want to understand his journey, they either want to categorize it into familiar tropes or use it to fit him into their own narratives. To share his struggles would be to hand others the brush and let them paint his portrait, and he refuses to be rendered in colors he didn't choose. His silence is neither evasion nor repression, but the ultimate act of self-definition. He has learned that vulnerability, when misplaced, becomes a liability, and that not all truths lose their power when unspoken. Within the self-imposed solitude of spirit, the Sigma male finds something rare in an age of compulsive sharing: unshakable inner sovereignty. His past is not a chain linking him to old wounds, but a compass calibrated by hard-won wisdom. The peace he cultivates comes from knowing that his evolution is his alone, unfiltered by others' perceptions, untainted by their pity or their praise. While the world clamors for attention and validation, the Sigma male moves with the quiet assurance of a man who answers to no one's expectations but his own. His strength doesn't come from the approval of an audience, but from the silent knowledge that he has survived what would break others, and emerged not just intact, but indomitable. In the end, his guarded nature isn't a wall, it's a moat protecting something priceless: the right to define himself on his own terms. The Sigma male doesn't hide his history because he fears it, he transcends it. And that, more than any confession or revelation, is the ultimate proof of his resilience. If you found this video insightful or relatable, why not join our growing community? Subscribe to the channel for more content exploring the mindsets, traits, and behaviors of Sigma males. Your engagement helps us dive deeper into these unique perspectives. Be sure to like this video if it resonated with you, share it with someone who might appreciate it, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Remember, as a Sigma male or someone inspired by their path, staying true to yourself is the ultimate strength. Keep evolving, stay strong, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.